Hey guys, welcome back. I am here today to do another book review. Yes, another book review. I have been getting some actual reading done lately, so that's good. And the book I want to talk about today is a novel. It's called Lizzie's War, and it was written by Tim Farrington, who is also the author of The Monk Downstairs. Now, I will tell you that I did read The Monk Downstairs a few years ago, and I didn't really care for it. I felt like it was a book that there was a whole lot of writing, but nothing ever really happened in the book. I feel like it was one of those books where they spent a lot of time kind of telling you moment by moment every, second that happens and how time passes during the day. But from start to finish, there really isn't much of a plot. That's kind of how I felt about that book. But even though there are times where I don't like a book, that doesn't stop me from reading more books by the author. I'm a voracious reader, and I'll read anything, and I have this interest when I've read a book from an author in reading like everything that they've written, so that I can really get familiar with the author and that kind of thing. So I did read another book by Mr. Farrington. And I liked this book better than I liked The Monk Downstairs. When I first started reading it, I sort of felt like this was going to be another book with no plot. It took a while, but it does have a plot. There is a story that happens, and so I did like this one better than The Monk Downstairs. However, I really can say that I really didn't like the book. I just didn't like it. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you as much as I can, like I always do, without, hopefully ruining anything about the book for you. So that is going to be very difficult. So the first thing I can tell you that I didn't like is that the very first chapter is an entire waste of time. I feel like the author wrote the first chapter to establish the time frame that the book is set in, and to kind of give you, the start of the timeline for the layout of the book and of the book's setting. And I feel like it was completely not necessary. First of all, because every single chapter is actually dated, like the month and the year, so you know where you are in the timeline of what is happening. But secondly, because the entire chapter had nothing to do with the book at all. It was completely irrelevant and should have been left out completely. Now, I will tell you that chapter was probably the best chapter of the entire book. So, had the rest of the book been like that first chapter, it probably would have been a lot, I don't want to say a lot more interesting, because I do think the idea of the book is interesting, and I don't want to be at all insulting to that, and you'll kind of learn why in a little bit. But that chapter had like some oomph to it and some interesting storyline, and after I read it, I was like, okay, well, let's, what the heck, let's see what's gonna happen. And then nothing to do with that whole chapter ever came up really again in the book. So a total waste of time. The chapter just shouldn't even be included in the book. Or he should have written an entire book about that chapter and what could have happened related to the topic of that chapter. And I know this is hard to understand because I'm not really giving you any details, but I do. I don't like to ruin it. So the rest of the book is basically about, it's basically a husband and wife. It's a family. They have 4 children, and the husband is in the military, and the setting of the book is during the time frame of the Vietnam War, and he is off at war during the book. And so I don't think it's ruining anything to tell you that the book is a story about the struggles that families go through, when you've and nowadays it's flip-flopped because there are women that go off to war and the husbands are home, with the kids and that kind of thing. But in the book, because it's based during the Vietnam War, the wives are at home with the children, and they are, trying to get through life and trying to raise all the kids with no help, and they're, worried about their husbands, and they're, there's resentments and things that come up, and just from human nature and all of that sort of thing that a woman would go through when her husband is off fighting a war, and she doesn't know if they're okay or not, or if they will live or not, and she's trying to get through every single day on her own, with all of the stresses that we have just in normal everyday life. And then you've got the story plot as well of the husband actually being off at war, and the changes that a person goes through when they face war, and all of the atrocities and the horrible circumstances that come with, war, and how it changes you. So basically the story is about that, which I think is a story that should be told a million times over. It's real life. The families really go through those kind of things, and I think it's a topic that should be talked about a lot. Not only to educate, the people who don't go through it about what the families go through, so that maybe they can better reach out, or they can better help, or they can provide more support, or they can just understand a little better, but also so that families who go through it can, understand that they're not alone, and just to show some respect for what they've gone through and that kind of thing. That being said, I really feel like he did a real disservice to it. When I finished reading the book, I almost felt insulted. And I almost felt like his telling of that story, not to say that it's peachy and rosy and there's no, there's no drama and snags in the real life stories, because I believe that there are, but I just felt insulted for the people who really go through the struggle at the end. And I don't think that was the author's intention, but that was how I felt. And there's also this sort of side plot that has to do with a priest, and that I felt just wasn't even, I felt it was not only insulting, but really had no place in the book, in the story at all. I felt like it was kind of a stretch. Technically, could the scenario ever happen in real life? Yes, but I don't know. It was just a reach, and I felt that was kind of insulting to what people really go through when you've got one person off at war and the other person at home trying to keep the family afloat. There are some parts of the book where I feel like if you're having serious PMS, it might make you cry. There are some parts in the book that will get you, and I'm not normally an emotional reader. Watching movies, will make me cry and that kind of thing, but reading books, I'm not normally the kind of person who laughs out loud, or, you might get a little chuckle out of me now and then, but, maybe I was particularly emotional, but I found some parts to be a little bit emotional for me, and normally you would think that, that for me would be like, whoa, this is a really good book, but it's still, at the end of it, I still was just, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I don't know if I was mad at it, and it's not like, I don't want to give you anything away about the ending or anything, because, I think sometimes you can watch a movie and it doesn't end the way you thought it was going to end, and you're mad about it. It wasn't that kind of a situation or anything, but I just didn't like it, and I felt a little insulted. And even though I don't think that it's completely off base, or that there isn't any truth to anything that was told in the book, there were just things that were added in that I just thought, really, you needed to put that in there. The chances of that happening in real life are very slim, and can't you just tell the story of the families that really go through this stuff? That's just how I felt about it. So, interestingly, even though I say that I just didn't like the book, it's still not a book that I would tell people, like, do not read that book. There are a few books that I've read in my lifetime where I would be like, that is crap. Nobody should read that. You know, it's like, the author should be punished for writing that crap. You know what I mean? Like, there have been a few books like that I felt that way about in my lifetime. I don't feel that way about this book. I would still tell people to read it. I wouldn't even say that it's so hard to describe because it's sort of like I want to tell you, I wouldn't even say that I dislike the book, I just didn't like it. And that doesn't make any sense, but do you understand what I mean? I don't dislike the book, I just didn't like the story. So this is a hard book to kind of, I don't know, describe to you, because how do you say to somebody like that it falls under your like category, but that you don't like the story? How does that make any sense, right? So it's not a book that I would say to buy. It's a book I would say, if you want to read it, borrow it. And maybe I'm just overtly sensitive. Maybe somebody else would read this book and be like, oh, come on, you know, it's just a story, and some of those things could happen, and, you know, I come from a military town. You know, I've been around the military my whole life. Pretty much everybody that I know or everybody in my family has been military at some point or another, or if they aren't, they have worked for the military as a civilian or whatever. This is just a big military area. I mean, the National Air Force Museum is here, and, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, flight was started here with Orville and Wilbur Wright and all that kind of thing. So I have very strong feelings about that kind of thing. So maybe I'm just overtly sensitive and feel that, you know, and am protective of the families that go through these kind of things, to where, you know, I just want to defend them or what they go through. And when there's something interjected, like the side story with the priest, that I just feel like is, you know, insulting and doesn't have much merit. Not to say that there aren't things that happen in marriages, but I don't know, I just, you know, maybe I'm just sensitive to that, and I just feel defensive and protective of families that go through this kind of thing. But just at the end, I just didn't like it. So probably the strangest review I've done so far, right? Might make you want to read the book even more, just like, you know, see what I'm talking about and see if you feel the same way about it. So again, you know, it's a book I would say go read it. And you might very much like it, and you might say, you know, hey, maybe you're just being a little sensitive. I don't know, but you might feel the same way as I did. Like, yeah, it's an important story that needs to be told, but I just am not a fan of how he did it, or I don't think his intentions were to be disrespectful, which is maybe why I'm not, like, super angry at the book and, you know, burning it in my backyard, right? Because I don't feel like that was the author's intentions at all. I feel like it was his intention to give, you know, his best, honest rendition as far as his understanding of what that might be like, that lifestyle might be like. But anyway, I just can't, I just didn't like it. So read it if you have an interest in reading it, and I hope that you will like it. See what you think about it. If you read it, like, come back and tell me what you think about it. See if we feel the same way, or if you feel differently, or, you know, it's just a book, so we don't all have to feel the same way about it, right? It's kind of irrelevant at the end of the day if we agree or disagree. It's just a book, right? So, you know, read it. I would rate it, though. You guys know that I always rate things with the 3 B's. I either say to buy it, borrow it, or burn it. This would be a borrow it. It's not one that I would go spend my money on. I mean, unless it was at the dollar store. Then I might. But, you know, borrow it from the library. If you love it after you've read it, then by all means go buy a copy and support the author. But For me, it's just a borrow, and I think maybe Tim Farrington's writing style is just not really for me. Like I said, I don't hate it, but I don't know. I need a little something more in books than what he's given in the two. I think I've only read 2 books by him, as far as I can remember. In the 2 books I've read, and I don't know. So far, I'm just kind of like, meh. They just don't do it for me. So, but go read it. Irony, right? Okay, so that's all I have for you this time. If you have any questions, leave the comments down below. Let me know what you're reading, what your favorite books are that you read lately, or a book that you really didn't like lately, or if you have a book where, if you can understand where I'm coming from when I say I like it but I don't like it, and you have a book that you feel that way about it, leave that down below, because I'll want to go read it too. And don't be surprised if you do ask a question about the book if I send you a direct message to answer it, because I don't like to ruin the books at all if I can help it for other readers, so I don't want to put too much information down there. Alright, and if you're new to my channel, then subscribe. We do talk about books here, but we also talk a lot about beauty and fashion and other girly things, and just, you know, everyday life and whatever. So, that's it. I will see you guys next time. Bye.